Hello, everybody. Just down on my end. What we have here, we drew this up on stream the other day. It's based on one of my other patterns. You can see these at fiddlebackoutpost.com. Look under the knife sheath area. Or my website, diamedesindustries.com. But we drew up this, which looks weird. It goes on your back at a canted angle like that, so that you can draw the knife, your right hand actually, on your back. So I drew that up, cut out a front and a back, and now we have to basket weave it, and the interior here, all I did is trace out the interior here, and that hasn't even been dampened yet. So we're all kind of set to tool this, and then we're going to glue it together. And then we are going to dye just the exterior. It will actually encompass the whole back, but that's down the road. So let's set our maker's mark first, and then we'll get to work on tooling. My misting bottle is almost out of mist. Oh, I also cut out a welt. And all I did is trace out the interior and then cut out the spot where the knife goes. So nothing big there. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason with Diomedes Industries, diamedesindustries.com. I think I have a command here. Yeah, you can check that out. And I think there is an outpost one. Yeah. So we're going to put our maker's mark on the back here. I just use my thumbnail to sort of lightly put in where that maker's mark will be. This is Wicket and Craig 8-ounce leather. Let's switch the music. There's our maker's mark put in. That will all make sense later. I'm leaving this wide because when I glue this on here, I want to have enough room to glue around it. What's going on, let it go. So we're going to trace this around with our scratch awl to make a definite mark here. And then I got to decide how I want this basket weave to look. I think what makes the most sense is to do it this direction. Yeah, that makes the most sense. In case a person has a basket weave belt. So what I'm going to do, move this camera a little closer. Lighting up a little. Very lightly run a line with this scratch awl. It's going to help me guide the legs of the basket weave stamp. This is a Barry King rope style basket weave. Yeah, that's what the one I want. Braided basket weave. That's right. I could always make him a matching belt. Come back. I'll make you a matching belt. Yeah, that's absolutely possible. Now the trick is to walk that along like that, using that very light line, which disappears as you go. Yeah, I'm a fan of this Barry King one as well. You know, Craft Tool, Tandy, they're just fine, but they lose so much in detail, right? When you really have good leather and you've gotten good enough to keep your stuff in a straight, you know. I've got a double rope one by Barry King as well, somewhere in there. Oh wait, here's one. Actually, this is a Craft Tool double rope, but that's not the one I was thinking of. Here's a Craft Tool braid. A few more in here. Somewhere. One trick to keep in mind is to keep the tool always, don't flip it, don't switch it. And so what I do is I just do a little black mark that I always put to the top of the project, or in this case to the left of the project. Yeah, Craft Tool are great. And their Pro series isn't bad. But there's a big difference, man, in stamp detail. So this is their Craft Tool Pro series. And this is the Barry King series. And it's just that depth. That Pro Tool is just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But look at Barry King's depth on the other side, right? Everything stands out crisply. And so that's the reason I use Barry King. And there are a million other really good ones, right? I'm just talking about Barry King right now. Yeah, their Pro Series is good. I won't really buy anything but the Pro Series as far as tools go. Because I think I have, yeah. Here's an older baseline Craft Tool. I keep it for, in fact, this is our good 50-50, you know, our apples and apples measurement here. Barry King in the middle, Craft Tool on the right. See how those lines are just fatter, not as clearly defined, and Barry King, just every line is right there, you know. I keep this one because it's got a flared kind of bow tie, and some people want that. So we're just going to walk these little train tracks along. Or if you're in the UK, tram tracks. And we're going to stay about a 1/4 inch. Yeah, exactly. We're going to stay about a 1/4 inch away from the edge because we're going to use a camouflaging stamp to run this border, and so we don't need to get it real close. Sometimes it helps to do just a little partial stamp, but that one was probably completely unnecessary. And so what you do with a partial stamp is you don't want to overrun the outside of this border, so you lean this to the side so that it does not go over that border. And it takes a little bit of practice to kind of know how that tool is going to operate. And then we're just going to do the same thing. This is just rinse and repeat. Now, I can get away with not casing the leather because I'm doing a very small field. Right? So it's not going to dry out in the meantime. And I've found that for most leathers, I can just do a quick spritz and get going. And I don't have to case it and wait overnight. But the old timers that recommend casing did so for a reason. They just didn't make that shit up. They were doing huge fenders and stuff on saddles, so they needed that to be wet for an incredibly long time because they're doing, you know, multiple square feet. I'm doing maybe a quarter of a square foot. Finished up a dozen sheaths or so for Fiddleback last night, and then edged them today and sealed them. They're all behind me on the bench. This is the last one for that order. A true custom. We're going to do all partial stamps. Oh yeah, that's it. I'm growing the hair, man. I'm growing hair just on your tablet. It's a miracle. It's AI. I've AI'd my stream to have hair. So we're just doing partial stamps on this very edge. I'll show you this in just a minute. And again, those are probably unnecessary, but actually I think those might have been. So all we did is partial stamps on the bottom there. So you can see how these run away, but they don't go over the edge. That's key. That's key. That partial stamp here. You also want to stay away from your camouflage stamp because it looks a little bush league when your field stamp, in this case a basket weave, goes into your camouflage stamp, your border stamp, whatever those are. So you just kind of got to get used to it. This one might do it a little bit. No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. The reason you keep your stamp oriented all in the same direction is because some stamps, especially the lower end stamps, are not uniform from left to right. And so that can sort of throw off things just to look. So that's all I need for the basket weave. And how you can test your basket weave to see if you did a good job is every one of these lines should be straight, and every one of these lines should be straight. Now mine aren't perfect, but you can see how those are railroad tracks, right? Those all are straight and parallel. That's key. That's key. Really work on keeping these straight, right? These can be a little wobbly because basket weave is a little wobbly, right? But they should be pretty damn straight. And those are pretty straight. So I'm happy with that. There are other people that can certainly do it better. Now we're going to go about a 3/32 off of our border here. And I like to do these corners first. And then that lets me set up. I'm going to do this tip as well, just the tip. First. You also have to get used to depth. Yeah, thanks. You also have to get used to depth. Because this stamp is a lot wider than this stamp. And so you hit it the same amount, and you're going to crush it, and you're going to cut your leather on the inside. So now in this case, I want to match up all these legs if I can. So I'm just going to press them in, and that's going to be pretty perfect. Matching up all these legs. Well, as you can see, I just made real fine impressions there, and that's going to let me connect all these legs and have it look good. Okay. Now we're going to run these all the way down, and if we're a little off on this end, that's okay. But I'll show you how to do that when we get down there, how you can sort of modify that just slightly. Now, it is best not to do a double hit. You saw me go back and just correct that. I can get away with that a little bit because of this scalloped camouflage stamp. It tends to lock itself into place. But most stamps don't. So don't do what I just did, which was a double hit. Work on getting your impression firm on the first strike. One thing that I have noticed, check out the difference between a Barry King end and a craft tool end. Barry King has a square ground end, and these are beveled off. You actually don't want that. It's nicer for tooling. It looks nicer. It causes your maul to slip off more often. So I haven't ground those flat, but usually I take it down to my knife grinder, put about 80 grit on the belt, on the flat platen, and just run it as flat as I can get it. And that allows it to grab the edges of this ribbed maul. Now, we have a couple of options. Okay, now I'm close to the end here. So I'm going to do the same thing again, where I just lay that out lightly, and that's actually going to be close enough. But I am going to cheat these apart just a little bit with each one, and it's going to get closer to the bottom stamp. So you can see how those last two closest to the tip are a little wider apart. That's to get it closer to this one. And I do that just on the last 3 or 4 to get those a little tighter. Probably not necessary because of the next step I'm about to take, but for me, I think it looks a little nicer. If your project is moving around on you, get a little weight on the bench to hold it down. I usually use a brick, oddly enough. The best thing to use are sandbags filled with lead shot. Lead shot's hard to find, so a lot of people just use BBs or steel shot. And I have about 8 of those bags downstairs that I repurposed some cornhole bags from. This is actually going to line up pretty much perfect. Almost like I've done this before. All right. Now, you could be done. You could be absolutely done. Right? This focus. But look at this top marks here. Why? Thank you. Look at these top marks. See how they overrun slightly into my camouflage stamp? I didn't worry about that too much because I knew I was doing something else after this. Which is using a beveling stamp, a checkered beveling stamp, which is going to cover up any of that and allows this edge to be crisp. This by far is the hardest stamp to run in any succession like that. What I'm doing is I put my finger like this. Yeah, I bet it was. And my pinky acts as a form of like shock, and it bounces it back up as I'm moving this along. And 15 years of practice. So we run that right along this edge. Now, we had a couple of options. We could have used a swivel knife to cut a line in here. I don't find it's necessary because I don't need that level of detail on a sheath, and it creates a weak spot. If you're doing decoration on a midfield, that weak spot doesn't matter because it's usually glued down to something else. So this is what we've got so far. Hey, that was quick. You can see how it's beveled on the top and not beveled on the bottom. But that checkering is going to cover up all those little overstrikes down here. I needed them here, I just didn't lean it back as far enough as I could have. You will learn as you're doing these that what you end up with often is double strikes where you bruise one area a little more than the other, and you then will jump to the next one. So you get these little, like, it's like waves in there. So it just takes practice, man. It just takes practice. And again, I'm not great at this. And then I'm going to clean up that tip just a little bit. Just tip. And then that is almost done. I've got a couple of little, let me see if I can find something here. Yeah, here we go. That's probably too small. That's a plain cedar. That's a really small plain cedar, which I don't want. Here we go. That's the one I'm looking for. This is a craft tool. because I use it so infrequently. And only for this, because I don't make flower arrangements, so I don't need to make seeds on the inside. That's why they call it a seeder. I just want a little decoration here to draw the eye to these corners. Now you could go all the way down 8 ounce leather. You could go all the way down and fill in every one of those gaps, but I think it starts to look a little busy at that point. So I just put it at the... There you go. That is that. Now, ultimately, we need to glue this to this, okay? But we need a welt on the inside so that when the knife is inserted, it doesn't overrun. So I marked off earlier where my welt was going to run with my scratch-all point. And now what I'm doing is just setting my glue lines with a pencil. I don't normally set glue lines with a pencil because sometimes you can see them. But this is a pancake sheath. You'd have to literally shine a light in there and maybe see these lines. So I don't worry about it too much, and it allows me to get the glue line really accurate. So we're going to set this aside. I'm going to put this by the fan. Let that dry. And then ultimately what I want is this glued into here and then the front piece on the front. But because my belt loops are here and here, I want to skive these wings down. So that's the next step. So I'm gonna trim down this welt just a little bit more. So that I know a little better where things start and stop. And now, what I know is I want to skive basically this whole area. Most of this is going to get cut off, but this part is not. Oh, you hear Autumn. Oh, you saw her? Hold on, let me give her some treats. Let's do it back to here. There you are, troublemaker. Sit. Scout manager. Now, I could use my skiving knife, and that would be just fine. But, because this is a little bit wider, I'm just going to use a safety skiver from Handy. And I'm going to take about half this off, down to about 4 ounce. It's not mission critical that this be some particular ounce on the edge. It just helps to take off fat from the inside of this welt. And then make it even. So ultimately, we have full thickness here at where the knife blade is going to run, right? And then it feathers out to, I would say it's roughly 4 ounce. Yeah, 4 right on the money. Wow, guys. How does he do it? Is it genetics or is it Maybelline? It's neither. I don't have a life. That's really where it is. got a little thinner on this one. It's like I've done that before, yeah. I would say that this edge now is 3 ounce on this side. Let's see. 4 over here, 3 over here. No. 5 and 4. All right, still on the money. We'll take down that 5 just a little bit. All right, easy money. You know what I just realized? Let me trace this around. Let me get this correct. Because the welt is going to be oversized. This is my single bevel knife I sell on my website, DiamondUseIndustries.com, the Talaria Wing. I have that in different handle materials if you want it. Comes in walnut. And I do a single bevel because then I can get right in up to the line and it always shears away. Which for me, not everyone, but for me, makes cleaner cuts. Now the tip there is a little fat for that corner. I could have made it work, but rough that sucker up. I will. I'm gonna. Okay. You saw me just sharpen it real quick with 1,000 grit. And then, actually that was 1,500 grit, and then strop it. I probably didn't even sharpen it, but I didn't know how long it had been. It's 15N20 high carbon steel with 2% nickel. So it's not stainless, but it's got a little stain resistance. The nickel carbides allow for the knife to be a little harder. I have been tempering these back. That knife is tempered to 58 Rockwell. I don't think I'm going to do that as much anymore. I think I'm just going to leave it at full hardness at 61. Maybe I'll temper it to like 60. But if I don't temper it as much, it is more fragile, but it's a knife, it's a tool on a table, right? It's not being used to beat rocks with, I hope. So it will be a little bit more prone to chip at that, but it'll keep its edge longer. Really? I gotta check that out. I saw a guy the other day that was selling an Aqualim looking product. He linked me to it because he was using it on his website. And he was putting it in the refillable markers. And then just literally just inking it on. And I was like, okay, gotta figure out what that is. Now, he was using it on, garment weight. Yeah, it was way cool, man. He was using it on like these things. A wide version of these, and he was just going chuk, 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 chuk. And whatever he put right up to that edge stayed there. And I was like, hey, what's that? If I figure that out, I will let you know. So what are they calling this Aqualim 315, Latigo? See, now I'm wondering if you just couldn't water down 315 and do that with it. I don't know. talking about Aqualim 315, which is a water-based, almost scentless contact cement. I'm using a kind of an industrial contact cement, but the smell is god awful, and if you don't crack a window, you're gonna get high. You're killing brain cells because it's toluene based. Okay. Okay. I'll be interested to see. That's really smart of them because people who are selling Aqualim have to buy it in big jugs and rebottle it, or sell it in gallon jugs. And most people, like a gallon of Aqualim lasts me a year. And I use glue a lot. Overran my center just a little bit. All right, 2 coats of that, and then 2 coats of this, and we'll let them both cure. Then we'll tap those down, glue those up, and then we'll glue the front to the back. We'll let this cure. Let's check on this one. See, it's all about the same color now. This is going to have 2 colors. What glue is that? That's Masters. Masters that I run pretty thin. I have a guy that I can order it from who is in the shoe sales, AGS leather goods or AGS shoe sales, something like that. And I order gallons of Masters and 2 gallons of thinner for every gallon of glue. Because I run it real thin, and the problem with toluene is that it flashes off. That's the good thing about toluene. That's the bad thing about toluene. It flashes off. Let me crack this window. So I don't die. You know what? I can put a coat on the back of here in the meantime. That's actually a little thick for me, and it's running pretty thin still. So before I leave the shop today, I will put a squirt in of thinner. I keep in a bottle over here, chemical mix bottle. This is one of the best things I ever bought. Were these little IceCo? They're for science labs, but they don't. You can squeeze them, and they do what they do, and they don't gas off. I used to use like a condiment bottle, but it always, over time would lose toluene. They're like $6 on Amazon. I bought like 10 of them because the garage has glue, thinner, alcohol, ammonia, just crazy stuff that I keep all in separate things, and you're able to label them and stay safe, Yeah, if I could find barge thinner in gallons, I'd use barge, but I cannot. And now that I have my connection and Masters works very well, I don't even mess with it. A local shoe guy turned me onto that. Alright, now we gotta line all this up. Hence the lines. Yay! No, I use ammonia to, once I have colored the metal, once I have etched the metal with ferric chloride, which I have in big PVC tubes, ammonia stops the acidic process because it's basic. So I actually have a big PVC tube filled with ammonia. Well, that's ammonia and soap and some other stuff. So I can dip it in the ferric chloride, clean it all off, and then dip it in the ammonia solution and let that sit. But if I'm just doing little work, I keep it in a little squirt bottle. Ferric chloride darkens the metal. A lot of acids do. One of my mixes is a mix of tannic acid and ferric chloride and some other shiz. Not the safest stuff to have in big tubes in your garage, but here we are. All right, so we left the welt fat so that we didn't have to really pay close attention to the edges. But as you can see, it's 8 ounce here, and then it thins to 4 ounce here. Well, maybe you can't see that, but it does. You'll have to trust me on that. And that's so that when you insert the belt through it, they're still the same, they're still good thickness, but it's easier to bend. All right. Yeah, as long as you're not in the garage with it. Yeah, well, hence the fire extinguisher that's out there, hence all those being right next to windows and ventilation. And even that, OSHA would have a heart attack seeing what I have out there. All right, we're using a rougher to rough up this edge. This lets the glue soak into these cut marks that I'm making and adhere better. That one had 2 coats on it already. Clean off all the dust so it stays out of the glue pot. Yeah, that's not as thin as it could be. More stringy today. I'll thin it out. It's still fine. I run it plenty thin. Some people like to run it like snot, and I'm just not a fan of it. All right. Actually, almost done here. Oh, really? So then what I do at the end of the night, I grab this ice cold bottle of contact cement thinner. And just give it a good squirt, maybe another, because it was not. Seems like I'm doing a lot. I'm not. High pressure, low volume. Give it a stir, but even then, it really needs to just sit overnight to go into full solution. All right. Let's let this dry just a little more. Dio's dancing. I'm not. I'm not dancing on the ceiling, Cookie. Really not, buddy. That's what I really can't. You just fall off the ceiling. Oh, yes. If I could, yes, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. That's always a little dicey, that process there. But I think we got it. That's the back. See why now I put it on that angle, because that's the angle the blade sits at. Now normally, I just bring this downstairs to the grinder and grind off any excess and make it all flush. But since we're on stream, I'll just trim it by hand. For the next step, this is also why I like that Talaria wing to have a single grind. Hey, Sandra Rose, welcome in. Again, if you're interested in this knife, look on DiomedesIndustries.com or exclamation point website. We're finishing up a sheath, Sander. We drew it up on stream Thursday. And it sat while I was doing some other things. Well, we had to wait for the customer. So we drew this up on stream on Thursday. And now you see it turn into a sheath. Almost. Whoop. We'll just trim this up by hand. The top is what matters more for this point, at this point. It's not going to be dry enough for me to stitch without a million stitch marks, so I'm not going to do that. But I do need to set the stitch lines and dye this. All right. That has been trimmed. I'll still end up running this over the sander just to make all the little lines even. But what I need to do next is set my stitch lines. So these stitch lines are all at 1/4 inch. That's why the offset lines for the oh, nice. You gotta make a sheath for it now? Oh, you sheathed the knife yourself. You did build it. Nice. I meant to adjust that out a little bit. You can go in business, Sander. Open up a business. Sheath making. SanderRosesSheaths.com. Make millions of dollars. Oh, dang. Never mind. Okay, we overshot our line here a little bit. That's going to need to come back to about here. And that's going to bump down just a little bit. There. Back it off to there. Let's see. Yeah, that's still good. And then this is going to need to come up to about here. Usually, if you got it from Lapland, usually those are Scandinavian grind knives. I'll bet you, if I had to guess, it looks a lot like this. Maybe not as fancy, but sometimes this is a birch bark. This is a Laplander style. This is a Scandinavian grind Puukko knife. Puukko literally means hand. In Swedish or in Finnish, can't remember. Got a reindeer antler, birch bark handle, and then brass all the way around. Got a sort of a teardrop shape, through tang. Could have looked like that. That would be my guess. All right. We're not going to punch all these all the way through. I just want to get a good mark for them. I got to fix something over here. I mean, you still could go into business, man. That's all I'm saying. Just Santa Rose knife and sheaths. Or not. I don't know. I'm just setting this so that I know where it's going to be. Because this now is overrun. So I got to add a little bit of covering up. You'd be on Forge and Fire, Sander. Make millions. Grind your fingers off. It's gonna be amazing. I don't know if I'm selling it, but I'm trying. All right, that's going to be good. That side doesn't need to be touched. Yeah, I got a Discord there. You can put a picture up there if you want to. Or you can just link it here if you've got a link. This is why I make those lines very fine. So that they can come back out if I need them to. Which I did. Alright, so these are going to be the stitch lines later. But now we need to dye the exterior of this because the customer wanted a two-tone look. This is where it's officially hit its ugly phase. The ugly duckling phase. And it's gonna stay ugly until tomorrow. Basically. I want to keep the water off of that tooling I just did. Because it will do nothing but soften that tooling. Okay. We're going to use Stevens Dark Brown. Knock some stuff over. I very rarely hand dye things, but here we are. Use a piece of shearling. We're going to trim up our piece of shearling. So we can control it a little better. All right, you're in. I just double checked your permissions. You should be good now. All right, so here's the trick. We don't want to get any brown on this interior. So, in order to try to do that, we got a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to use shearling on the back, because it will give us our best chance at looking decent. Quick circular motions, then straight lines, then straight lines in a different direction, then circular motion again. And usually that looks pretty good. That's for the back. For the front, all right, sounds good. We're going to use a refillable marker with the same dye and then pray. That's pretty much what we're going to do. The reason we beveled those edges so that when we ran this marker up to those edges, it wouldn't be as easy to overrun it. So again, some circular motion in the wider areas, straight lines. The difficulty is getting the same color, but because we're front and back, as long as they're close, it will be fine. And then we're going to do something I never do, almost, is oil this. Get everything to level, as they call it, overnight. We're almost done here for what I can get done on this today. Then we'll stitch it and do the edges, and then that's it done. This has got to dry now. More run down here, I'm thinking. That will all lighten up. You can see it already happening. Now, like I said, we're going to oil it a little bit. Well, you can tell I don't ever use this neat's foot oil much. It was getting pretty thick towards the base. This is neat's foot oil. I've had it for a long time. It's just the emollients that are left over from the rendering process of bovine. Bones, skin, that sort of stuff. They render down into an oil. Then you can sort of force these emollients back in the leather that's been dried out by putting it on. In this case, it's going to help all that dye that I just did to look even after it settles. They call it leveling. Like I said, we have entered the ugly phase, kids. all of our hard work seems like it's just gone away. So you can see how even that looks on its back, but it's going to be way darker than what it's actually going to turn out when it's done. Well, alright kids, that's all I've got for today. I wanted to get this done. I gotta go down and cut a whole bunch of field note covers. I'll stitch this up, I'll put it in Discord. You can find me on Twitch at Diomedes_Industries. You can find me on the web at DiomedesIndustries.com. I will put my website up again. If you want to look at the sheaths in particular, you can go to Outpost website, or I think I've got a links. Yeah, check me out on Instagram. All right, kids, I will see you next week. Good to see you all. Let's see if we can find somebody to raid real quick. We are gonna raid Lost Viking Metalworks. He's making a knife for me right now, actually. So we're gonna raid him. And I will see you all soon. Not sure when. Soon. But it's good to see everybody. Alright. See you soon. Take care of each other.